Welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I'm Representative Gary Hopper, the Great.
The Great?
The Great. I've decided that I
It's not the
well,
honorable,
I was
it's,
gonna,
it's the Great?
Well, I was just going to change my first name from Gary, like, you know how you can have your name legally changed, to Doctor. Right?
Doctor?
But I figure if I
Dr.
just
Joe
add
Biden?
Great on the end, it has kind of the same effect without having the name
So is
changed.
it kind of like the transition between where Gandalf went through? Gandalf the Gray into Gandalf the White?
Same thing. Same exact thing. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
and,
Gary,
and the modesty. I'm wicked modest, too.
I was talking to my
Sometimes I
neighbor.
forget how modest. What?
Yeah, modest.
Oh, I got a new decoration. Same decoration as last week. We're gonna take the hand grenade.
Every time you pull that pen, Gary.
I know it makes you nervous. That's why I do it. I got to get rid of that. There we go. A little bit of Christmas decoration here.
Those are very vibrant and alive flowers you got there.
I know.
Gary.
I know.
That's
I know. It's pretty great.
unbelievable.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I was pretty excited about it.
Yeah, that's nice.
What? What'd you want? You wanted to say something?
No. Are you
What?
ready for the snow tonight?
No.
I was talking to my neighbor about the snow
Yeah.
and talking about just the weather. I found out he was a Democrat.
How'd you know?
Well, we were talking about how much snow we're getting tonight, and I said, well, you know, it's going to be 12 to 15 inches. And he said, you know, when you go to bed, you're going to think it's 12 to 15 inches.
Oh, jeez.
But when you wake up in the morning, it's going to
gonna
be
be
48.
48. Right.
That's when I knew he was a Democrat.
Right. That's a good indicator. So, guess who we got up for guests tonight?
Who?
Sharon and Don Bolduc are here.
Nice.
We got
Welcome.
the duo, the dynamic duo.
Exactly.
Because I kind of wanted to talk. Oh, so you're going to teach a class this fall, New Year, on Crimean War.
Yeah, I'm using the Crimean War to, in the study of the different leaders in the Crimean War on both sides, in my leadership course.
Okay. Because because you posted that the other day, and I'm a glutton for punishment, so I watched a 2-hour documentary on how that was
Yeah,
poorly led,
that's right.
and it was so heartbreaking.
Wasn't it heartbreaking?
The generals from the English side went home for Christmas
Yeah,
and left those guys there to freeze to death.
yeah,
Yikes.
yeah.
Oh, it was
Everything
so
from
brutal.
the administration of the medicine to the disease to the poor tactics that got people killed. It was just, I mean, unbelievable. The charge of the Light Brigade, the Battle
400
of Balaclava. Yeah.
Yes, 400 soldiers ran in on horseback against cannon fire.
Right. And did you see that
It's like, really?
the commander of the Light Brigade would not release the artist's rendition until he painted him and his horse at the front of the cavalry charge,
Which probably wasn't
which
the
he
case.
wasn't there. The legend of the Crimean War, the legend that surrounds it all,
Propaganda?
is
Yeah,
fiction.
that's hard to
Really
believe.
Right.
It's hard to believe they actually used propaganda back then.
Yeah.
I thought that was something new.
The documentary that you watched,
Yeah.
I am sure, is the documentary that was taken from the letters and the diaries of the soldiers,
Yes. Yeah.
and not the dispatches and the letters and the artist renditions and the poems that were written. Rudyard Kipling wrote a beautiful song, "Charge of the Light Brigade," in honor of their charge. But nonetheless, that's where, ours is not to question why, ours is to do or die, right?
Or
That's
commit
right in the
suicide,
poem.
as
Yeah.
you might
And that's
another
what
way
it
to
was.
look at it, yeah.
I mean, the Russians were on the high ground with all their artillery on the left and right flanks and in the middle. And they ran right in the middle of it.
It's just suicide.
Suicide. Right.
Yeah, it's just. And then the nurse, that was where, what's her name?
Florence Nightingale.
Florence Nightingale went
Yeah.
down to help, and she did great things.
Yeah.
But then there was another woman, I think she was from South America, wanted to get involved, and Nightingale didn't want anything to do with her. But so she went up to the front lines anyway to help soldiers.
Right.
and she started writing back that a good indicator that wounds are not taken care of is when they're still full of maggots.
Right. Yes.
That's an indicator.
Yeah,
That
you're
was an
right. She went down with tea and whiskey and scotch and food, right down to the front
Yeah, I
lines.
don't
and,
remember her name.
And I can't remember her name either, but I have it written down. So, you know, the reason they didn't want her help was because she was a black woman.
Oh, I didn't even know that. It didn't say that.
Yeah, she's a black woman. Yeah.
Oh.
And so they didn't want her help.
Right.
But the men loved her, and she
Right.
did great, care for her. It reminded me of, when I was in Korea for a year, and we used to go out to the field, or we were up on the DMZ doing our patrolling. I had a name for her. She was called Ajima, and she came out to the field with us, and she cooked, the famous ramen and cheese. Sharon knows. She came over and visited me while I was over there, and she had her she was right out there with the troops, right right within our formations. And if you didn't have a hot meal available to you, you went over to Ajima for a couple bucks. You got, some
big bowl of noodles.
yeah,
Cheesy
big
noodles.
bowl of cheesy noodles and anything else you wanted, right?
That's awesome, man.
It was great. When I was, of course, I've been studying this war for a long time, because a lot of the things, mistakes that were made there by the leadership are made today.
No.
Yes.
I hope they're
Yes.
equally covered over with good propaganda.
History doesn't repeat
They
itself.
are.
No.
They are.
No.
Yeah. So I try to point that out, and it's something that I used as mechanisms. I used as classes when I talked to my service members at every level of command. We would discuss all these things, right? The actions of your leaders. It matters, and so that's why I told them. I said, hey, the reports that you send up are the reports that get forwarded.
Right.
I don't massage them. I don't have my staff read them and then massage them to cover anything up. Make them.
Make it look like you're progressing, whether or not you are. And
I
all that
send the
other
truth
stuff.
up, right?
Right.
That comes from the ground.
Right.
And there's no candy coating of this thing. And hey, let me tell you, it can have impact. I'll tell you a story right now. I was a battalion commander, and my guys were telling me that there is an insurgency here in southern Afghanistan. This was 2005 to 2007. 2 different rotations. It's here. It's alive and well. Look, here's pictures. Here's, this is what we're seeing. This is what the locals are telling us. This is who we're fighting. And you could see it. But there was a denial at the higher headquarters, at the general officer level, because there's no insurgency, because we want to turn this fight over to NATO. And NATO is going to do peacekeeping operations, so that if there is an insurgency in southern Afghanistan,
It's not ready for NATO.
It's not ready for NATO.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So 5 times I got visited by the 3-star. I was a battalion commander at the time, lieutenant colonel. 5 times came down there. 5 times I told him the same thing. 5 times I showed him. 5 times we took him out there to see it. 5 times. Donald Rumsfeld came. And it was a great visit with Secretary Rumsfeld, and he sat in our briefing room. And he sat down, because by this time, my reports were getting to Washington, D.C., and people were like, what is going on?
Right. They want to know. Yeah.
Who is this lieutenant colonel down there? Well, hey, I'm just telling you the truth. So Donald Rumsfeld comes to visit. We take advantage of that. He gives my guys some awards for valor, Purple Hearts, this, that, and the other thing. It was a very good visit. But we're sitting in the briefing room, and he looks around, and the entire entourage that came in there, to include the 3-star commanding general, he said, everybody out of the room. One note taker for me, and it's Colonel so-and-so, and I'm talking to these guys by myself. And I had my subordinate commanders that we brought in from the field sitting there, because I wanted him to get the truth from them. And I looked at him and I said, all right, sir, it's their show. These are the guys that are on the ground. These are the guys that are in the places. And he's briefing them. He turned around and looked at his colonel, and he goes, sir, he goes, Bill or whatever the hell his name was, he says, hey, why don't I hear this? And he goes, the colonel, right out of his mouth, it's because your generals aren't telling you.
Right.
Right? And, we left there. We went and had, after that, he thanked us
So
and
now
shook
you're
all
in
my
big
guys.
trouble.
Yeah. Well, I was always in big trouble, so it really doesn't matter. And I told the 3-star general. I said, "Hey, sir," because he pulled me aside in the mess hall and he said, "Hey, what did you tell the secretary?" And I said, "I didn't tell the secretary anything that I hadn't already told you.
Right.
You will not be surprised by any of the information that the secretary comes out with in the briefing that we gave."
Right.
And it was the briefing I was going to give to him with you there. He's the one that asked you to leave because he thought we weren't going to be telling him what he needed to hear. Well, that's how we operate. We tell you what you need to hear,
Right.
not what you want to hear. And we certainly don't shape things at the expense of the people on the ground so that you can do things up here that benefit you politically,
Right.
because that's just a disaster. Well, that's what you saw in the Crimean War all over the place. It's
I-
horrible.
I
Horrible.
watched it. I was so sad by the time I ended up watching that.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make you sad.
Oh, you did. You
But,
did. Well, when I watch that stuff, because I don't, I probably look at it different than most people, and like I see the charge of the Light Brigade and how unbelievably brave those guys were. But I see the bravery, but I also see the unnecessary slaughter of human beings to feed somebody's ego.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at those as children.
Right.
Because now that I'm super old, I look at an 18-year-old charging into battle to certain death
Mm-hmm.
as my son, and it's tragic.
It is tragic.
Fighting a war that's necessary to fight is one thing. Sending, I remember years ago, Dad was a jarhead, and he was in the same circumstance in the Frozen Chosen,
Mm-hmm.
where MacArthur would not take evidence that the Chinese were there,
Mm-hmm.
and that there was a lot of Chinese there. He said, "No way, Mao's not going to do that," and just sent my dad and 9,999 Marines up into the Frozen Chosen.
Mm-hmm.
And it was arrogance,
It was arrogance.
and it almost got all 10,000 of them killed.
The 2-star Marine, whose name escapes me at this time, was the only one telling him the ground truth there. And his commanders above him were Army commanders, 3 stars, and they were telling him that he was wrong and that you're going to do this, you're going to do that. What are you, afraid to fight? Well, that's not the case at all.
Right.
And see, that's what, that's the sad thing is they throw that in your face, right?
Right.
And he's like, "No, we're not afraid to fight. This is it. This is the deal. We are going to get overrun by the Chinese." Right? And you're right. There's no Chinese here, and the
Right.
Chinese can't fight, right? That's another thing. Really all they have is shovels and ice picks. Okay, well, get ready.
You've got enough guys with shovels and ice picks, you're still going to die.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And when they're coming, wave after wave after wave, and you got the cold to contend with, and you're stacking up bodies. I mean, they were literally stacking up bodies to use them as protection. They were frozen bodies.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
And all our bodies strapped to all the vehicles were being used as weight, so the vehicles didn't get stuck in the mud and could,
Yeah,
had the weight they needed in order to keep moving forward.
it was
Can
horrible.
you imagine? It was horrible.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
It was
You know?
completely unnecessary.
Completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Particularly when you look at the end result.
So my dad was used to tool on the French because they during World War I, a bunch of them turned tail on the battlefield,
Mm-hmm.
and I forget which battle it was. So then I looked into it. I started because I love history, and I think that's probably part of the problem why the vote went on the 2020 vote the way it went. The way it did is by virtue of the fact that people are completely ignorant of history.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so it was the French generals were they would send a wave of soldiers across the DMZ, and they would just get wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
Just torn apart, wiped out, and so they'd send another wave, and another wave, and another wave. And these are people's children.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the French soldiers said, "I don't think so," and they walked off the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I see it as an adult and as a father, amen.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had no regard for the lives that were being lost out of their arrogance and stupidity.
Well, and the Germans, they had a tremendous respect for the Allies in that trench warfare, and they, that's where the term, such lions led by sheep, right?
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yes.
I know they called the Scots the ladies ladies from hell because they wore kilts.
They wore kilts, right? Watch out for those Scots now, right? So I mean that's where that whole saying came from. The Germans' high regard for the foot soldier, for the bravery and what they did time and time again, over and over and over, and then just sitting in those trenches getting bombarded.
Right.
Hence the term shell shock, right?
Yeah.
To describe someone who has post-traumatic stress, right? We identify with that today, combat fatigue in World War II and shell shock in World War I, and referred to during the Civil War as the soldier's heart.
Was it really?
Yeah. Isn't that something?
No, I never heard that one.
Yeah, the soldier's heart.
Was it meant
there was much more of an understanding, I think, in the Civil War than there was going forward with post-traumatic stress.
Was that Crimean War the first beginning of trench warfare? Because I know we had trench warfare in the Civil War, but that was 10 years after.
Right. Well, it was just a, kind of a return to siege warfare. It was the beginning of setting up, trenches forward of your positions and fighting and dying in your trenches and then charging over open ground. We're talking
right.
1853 to 1856. And, the Brits in all their, military wisdom didn't cut off the sea lines of communication from the Don River and St. Petersburg until 1855.
Right.
Right?
So they were all being well fed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tolstoy, the guy who wrote, War and Peace, was writing his book then. And he's quoted as saying in his diary that war isn't all that bad. I'm having a wonderful time. I'm drinking tea and eating crumpets here, and it's, very nice. Well, the dynamic of the war changed. Now, remember, it started in 1853, and it wasn't until 1855 that they decided they were going to cut off the sea lines of communication
right.
to St. Petersburg, where they're getting all their supplies from.
Yeah.
And that's the first thing you do. Isolate the enemy.
Right.
Well, and exactly. It's not as though, the English are known for having the most powerful navy in the world at the time,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that passage through the Nordic countries up into St. Petersburg
right.
is very narrow.
Right.
I've sailed it myself.
There you go.
It's very easy to cut off.
Yeah, and they elected to do that way too late. After they just suffered with disease and throwing guys out, in the elements, and the administration of medicine was terrible. It's just
the administration
over
all along.
and over.
They actually, the propaganda was so bad that they were taking photos of the English soldiers in nice warm jackets, but it was in spring because they wanted to prove back in England that
right.
they were taking care of their kids, right. But it was too late. They were sweating in these jackets they finally got after the winter was over.
After the winter was over.
Yeah, it was horrible.
Get those jackets on and take some photos, man.
Yeah.
We got to send them back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and where did the guys running the war sit? They sat on ships, fat and happy.
Oh yeah.
Right? While the guys were on the ground, sucking it up. And that's not leadership.
No.
You don't operate at the expense of your men and women. When I was a colonel, I took command of the Joint Special Operations Command, Combined Joint Special Operations Command in Afghanistan. And, that was a countrywide command. I had people everywhere, north, west, east, south, all over the place. And one of the things that I found out real early in my travels around was that what we were eating at the headquarters wasn't the same stuff that the guys had down at the lower levels. And so one of the things I did was I brought the leadership at my level into the mess hall, and I said, these lickies and chewies, if our guys don't have them, we don't have them.
The what?
Lickies and Chewies, you know, candy and you know, crackers and cookies and all
Nice
these
comfort.
yummies.
All the
Comfort food.
Yeah, comfort food.
Okay.
Right, sorry, Lickies and Chewies, yeah. You know, if they don't have it, we don't have it. We had ice cream.
He grew up
If
in a
they don't
Marine
have ice
Corps
cream,
household, not
right,
an Army
yeah.
household.
Yeah, we didn't.
Different terms.
Yeah.
If they don't have pralines and cream, we don't have pralines and cream.
Right, right.
And then I said, get ready. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, going to be the same thing. If we can't figure out how to get Christmas, you know, Thanksgiving dinner out to our guys, and that's a turkey, and that's, you know, all the fixins, then we're not having them up here. We're going to have peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, okay? Well, I tell you what, that got everybody motivated, right? And boom, boom, boom. Now, every place I went, the Lickies and Chewies were there. The condiments were there. What's life without condiments? for
Right,
crying out
right,
loud?
exactly.
Especially when you're in the field, right?
Right.
So I'm like, all right. So they go, hey, sir, we got a problem. We can't send the butterball turkeys out there to our guys because some of them don't have refrigeration units. And I said, well, when are the refrigeration units coming in? He said, well, we knew you were going to ask that question, and it's not going to come in until after the new year because of, you know, the supply chain and so on. And I said, all right, so what's the solution? Well, one of my lieutenants that was a logistics person came up with the idea to drop live turkeys into the guys, right?
I've seen this
And the
episode
feed.
before.
Oh, come
Gumbo
on.
drum.
We've seen that. We've seen that. See-
And so they built the
They
cages.
did that in Cincinnati once.
They built the cages. We put them in our.
You're serious?
Yeah, I'm serious.
Yeah.
They put them in. They jumped them in. We called it Operation Turkey Drop, and not one turkey was killed. They all came in.
They all get their wings.
So he
Okay,
did
wait
better
a
than
second.
Mr. Carlson.
Huh?
Okay, listen.
What?
If no turkeys were killed, how'd they do Thanksgiving?
Well, they killed them once they got
Oh,
on
all
the ground.
right, all right.
You know, they got them
Yeah.
about a month early, and with all the feed to fatten them up.
Right.
Right? And so I got pictures back. Everyone was happy. I went out and saw guys. They had their turkeys. You know, the Afghans, you know, we you know, out there in the remote areas, we live off the land with the Afghans, and they hired Afghan cooks to cook everything up.
Oh,
and
no kidding.
They had all the fixings. Well, it's mid-January. I go out to one of my Marine Special Ops locations, and I end up on the ground, you know, land on the ground. We come out, and I'm going to check out some training, and these two turkeys, enormous turkeys, enormous,
Right.
Oh,
come
they
running
got
up
pardoned.
next to me.
They're the
right?
pardoned
They look like
turkeys.
ostrich.
Bumped right into me, and, you know, so I said hello, and I go, who are these guys? And they said, Gertrude and Joseph. I can't remember the names, but they had names for them. And we continue to walk, and the turkeys run off. They go into this GP medium tent, big tent, with different levels of boxes in there with some, you know, all nice hay laid down. And I go, and he goes, well, that's where they live, sir. And I go, are these the turkeys we dropped in? And he goes, he looks at the ground, he goes, yes, sir. And I go, why didn't you eat them? He goes, well, the guys named them, and they became their pets, and they just didn't have the heart to do it. And I go, you steely-eyed Marine Corps Special Ops guys
Didn't have the
didn't have the heart to have turkey dinner, right? I go, God bless America. Well, all right, that's your prerogative. You got the turkeys, you can do whatever you want with them. He goes, well, the hard part is keeping our Afghan partners away from them, because every time they look at them, they see food, a meal, right? So an Army SF team went in to replace the Marine Corps team.
Uh-oh.
Within days,
Yes.
I got a photo. Thank you, sir.
Dinner.
Dinner, right? So anyways,
That's pretty awesome.
that is awesome. So my point is, you do not operate at the expense of your men and women in the field. You share as much of the same hardship that they share, and that is it, right? And a lot of times we don't see that, right?
No.
So I have a question along those lines. During the Revolutionary War, when we were fighting the British, we did something that was unique at the time, right? The British had a particular way of fighting wars, right? It's the way that wars were always fought, right? You line people up, you load up the muskets,
Target
right?
practice.
And you shoot, right? And then you fall back.
Take
The
a
next
knee.
line comes up, having fully reloaded, and they shoot. And we bucked the trend, and we went guerrilla warfare, something we learned from the Native Americans. And that changing of the style is what, part of what has attributed us to having beat the most powerful army and the most powerful navy off of this continent. And so what was happening on the leadership on the English side was they were just doing things as they had always done, right?
We've always
you had
done
the,
it this
you had
way.
the officers in the back. They had their maps. They had their goals, and they were directing the men on the front line to achieve those goals by doing certain things. So that's the way leadership was done. And of course, the officers, they stayed in houses, they stayed in warm places, whereas the men didn't. But after the Revolutionary War, warfare had to change, right? And so things changed for the English and the way they fought war, and we get this trench warfare coming up. So as the tactics change over time due to technology, right? Trench warfare had its place and was successful in certain instances, but then you had the advent of the machine gun, right? Where you don't have muskets anymore. Now you have semi-automatics,
Repeating rifles,
right?
semi-automatics, automatics,
and then you get to the Gatling gun, right?
Yep.
And all of a sudden, this powerful thing, the cavalry, isn't so powerful anymore because there's a line of Gatling guns on the other side. So warfare has to change. And so what I'm asking is this business of the officers, the leadership in the Crimean War, and the way they were behaving. Was it because they didn't know how to fight this new style of war? Was it because war was changing? You see what I'm saying? So when we get these lapses in leadership, is it because the leadership isn't willing to adapt to the new technology and the new styles and the enemy's new style?
Most often, the adapting happens on the ground, and the guys at the top have to catch up.
That's exactly what I'm getting at.
And what happens is they, have a style of battle command that
They were taught.
and they're sticking to it,
Exactly.
right? You see that today. And, the idea is to support the guys on the ground and what they're doing and what they're telling you needs to be done. And I guarantee you that in trench warfare, there were probably, a whole bunch of people saying, this isn't working. Why do we keep doing this?
Right.
Over and over and over again, right? And when the commanders used to take the other commanders and bring them back to their headquarters for their briefings, right? It's like the Lost Battalion in World War I, where the U.S. general, the division commander, wasn't listening to his battalion commander because he was a lawyer and he wasn't a professional soldier. He came out of the New York National Guard and was a unit that was attached to this division. This guy's a West Point graduate and a professional soldier, and refused to listen to this battalion commander. And when they went into the battle, they had an American unit on one side, French unit on the other, and the New York battalion in the center. And he tried to give the best counsel to the general at their meeting that he could, and the general said, you're going to go in there and you're going to do what you're told, and that's it. And this is kind of what we get for putting a lawyer in charge of a battalion, right?
Right.
and he was also someone who protested against going to World War I. But when the decision was made, he was one of the first one to put his uniform on and go, right? Which was pretty significant, right? Yep, he didn't want to go to war, so he did, you know, he within the rules and laws of our nation, pushed back to the point where the decision was made, and then he got in uniform and he did what his country asked him to do. And that's pretty spectacular. Something you wouldn't probably see today by
Right.
too many folks,
Right.
right? So he did that, and he got the Medal of Honor. It was the most decorated battalion in World War I, but it became the Lost Battalion because the lawyer from New York was the only one that continued his mission. The other American unit fell back, and the French unit fell back. And they took the fight to the Germans, and because they didn't give up, because they didn't quit, this one battalion was victorious.
And it was because he wasn't a professional soldier.
Right.
He was adapting.
He was
the
adapting.
way a private
Right.
citizen would
Exactly.
typically adapt.
Exactly. And that's exactly what he did. And he told the general, I'll take my battalion in there, but just get ready to fill a lot of body bags, right? And he had, I believe, around 600 men and came out of there with about 200.
Wow.
But he didn't quit. One of the French generals looks at the U.S. general and said, not too bad for a New York lawyer. He ended up committing suicide in, I think, 1923 from post-traumatic stress. Was never able to reconcile the loss of all his men. Inside a system that, really didn't give you much help back then. But he ended up killing himself. He went on a cruise, left a nice long letter, went on a cruise, and jumped overboard.
Sad.
It is sad, right?
It's especially sad when you consider the integrity that man had to do exactly what he
Right.
needed to do.
Right. Yeah.
But he also had that same heart that made it unbelievable.
Audie Murphy died a broken man in a gutter in New York.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he died a broken man from post-traumatic stress. One of the most highly decorated men, and these are brave men. These are men throughout the history of our nation that time and time again, some of them go off and they serve their country. They do well, only to come back and have to struggle with their demons for the rest of their
By
life.
themselves. Is the
By
awkward
themselves.
That was
part.
it. He
Yeah.
he was celebrated. He was made into a movie star.
Right.
Right. But it was always, hey, Audie Murphy, you need to live up to this standard. We're putting you on this pedestal, and
Yeah.
you know.
And he had the alcohol problems, and he had everything that went with that.
Well, the
Trying
alcohol- a lot of
to self-medicate.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going
But
to
it
say.
was.
A lot
It was
of
all
that, a lot of
self-medication.
that alcohol
Yeah.
problem for vets is just self-medicating.
That's
trying
all it
to
is.
Shut
It's
the
not because
demons
they're
out.
weak.
No.
They're just fighting. Right?
They already proved that.
Yeah.
They already proved whether or not they're weak.
Exactly.
Now they're just
Exactly.
trying to hold on to reality. You know.
My own party characterized me as weak, broke, and I need a dog. And that's why
I thought that.
that's why I'm not qualified to be a U.S. senator.
thought
But
that-
that's wrong.
I thought the
Right.
dog needed you.
Huh? Yeah. Sometimes he does. But nonetheless, we can't keep doing this to our generation of warriors. We have to we have to understand that when you send someone off to war, they're not going to come back. They're going to come back very different.
Yeah, I think I've.
And there are obligations that we have when we're going to send our sons and daughters off to war. And we have to take care of them when they come back. And that means we have to understand the mental injuries, the physical injuries, and the spiritual damage that's done to them, right? Sharon's here with me. It's time for you to talk. You know better than anybody
It's time for me to talk.
Yes. Just,
what our service members
Yeah,
struggle with, and what it means to families not to have
Not just the service
not to have
members,
their
the families.
Yeah, the families,
Too.
the families too. So go ahead.
Everybody suffers. No, I'm
ahead,
just going to confirm what you said. That's absolutely true. They come back different every time, and the family has to adjust so that then the family dynamic changes and is different and affected by it. So, And we don't even begin to acknowledge that yet. We're barely acknowledging the service members, you know, have issues, let alone the families, the children, the spouses. So
Tell your bacon a pie analogy. Tell your bacon.
funny.
You're gonna love this.
Okay.
Honestly.
Well, it was like years, I don't know, maybe, was it just before you were diagnosed? But anyway, it was a while ago. A spouse had asked me a question about her husband and said, you know, am I the only one experiencing this? And I said, no, absolutely not. We're all experiencing the same things. We see the same changes. And they're like, well, how do you know? I mean, how do you know if it's PTS or... I said, you can't, it's not like one day you wake up and you're like, oh, I think you have PTSD. We like to call it PTS because it's not a disorder. I said, it's like strawberry rhubarb pie, let's say. And I only say that because that's my favorite pie. And I like to make it. And I like to eat it. I said, you know, you bake this perfect strawberry rhubarb pie, right? It has homemade flaky crust. It has fresh strawberries and rhubarb, and it's hot out of the oven, and it's delicious. Has a little sprinkles of sugar on the top. And that's like, wow, that's a great pie,
Right.
you know? And that's like your spouse. When you first meet him, you're like, Dawn was my perfect strawberry rhubarb pie, right? It was
Right,
everything
right.
I wanted in one little warm package.
Right,
So they go off to war and something small changes. And they come back and you don't notice it right away. It's not something real visible. It's like if you change one little ingredient of the pie, right?
Right.
So maybe you bought frozen strawberries this time because you didn't have fresh. It's still a strawberry rhubarb pie. It still looks great, you know. It just tastes a little off, but you can't quite put your finger on it, you know,
Right.
because it's still pie. And then they go away, come back again. Maybe this time it's something, so you get the point, like over and over. But for me, it's the crust, right? There's nothing like a good flaky crust. So at the end, and
See-
I don't know, you went, what, 10 deployments in combat? So by this time, that crust is not the same crust,
Right.
you know? So now to me, it's like, I don't even want that pie, right?
Right.
Well, I think that happens.
She just analogized you with a flaky crust.
I'm flaky.
Flaky is the key word here. But you know, you get the point.
I
It's
do-
like,
I do
and
understand.
obviously, I could bring that pie anywhere, and people would still recognize it as strawberry rhubarb pie,
Right.
right? But it's not the strawberry rhubarb pie I used to make, or that I would rather have.
Right.
It's the same way. It's like the people, they're still the same people, you know, inside, and but they're changed,
Yeah.
you know, and sometimes spouses have a hard time putting their finger on specific things, so it's easy to sort of excuse it as something else and not really face the real issue.
I think, you know, I grew up in a military family, you know, aunts, uncles, my grandfather, my father. I think that in any marriage, people change,
Absolutely.
right? So if you're married to the same person, or if you're with the same person from the time you're 20
It's a great point.
to the time you're in your 80s and you
Old
grow
like
old
us.
and die, you are not going to be the same people
No.
that you were when you first met.
Mm-hmm.
But in a typical family
I know
household,
what you're gonna say.
you're together
You
throughout
see
those
it.
changes.
Exactly.
You understand each other and why you changed and how you
Yep.
changed. But in any military family,
Mm-hmm.
there's this concept of a deployment,
Yep.
right? Even a deployment in peacetime, right? You take with the
Mm-hmm. Still
Navy.
time
where
away.
You get on
Right.
an aircraft
Yeah.
carrier
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
submarine, you're gone for 3, 4, 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
You come back, and one of those minor changes has taken place, even though nothing actually took place in
Mm-hmm. Right.
the way of conflict
Right.
during a deployment. They come back a little bit changed, and it's harder.
Experiences change people regardless.
Exactly.
So.
It's harder on a family that has to
Yeah.
be separated
Yep.
like that. But you take that same 6-month deployment and you send that soldier, that sailor, that airman
Mm-hmm.
off, and that airman witnesses something brutal that none of us ever want to witness in our
That's
lives.
right.
Either witnesses or even participates in. they come back really changed.
Yeah.
And that change is so much more significant.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a training, right? You get a combat helicopter pilot who's out doing training, landing on amphibious aircraft carriers, and that is so unbelievable stressful. And when you come back, you are changed.
Yeah.
And we just see that so much more significantly in a military family than you
Right.
would in a normal family.
Right.
Those changes happen. They
Yeah.
just don't happen as rapidly as they do in the military.
Yeah, well, you know, you look at the guys in Nevada that go into a trailer. And they're flying
true.
drones
Yep.
in Afghanistan, someplace in Africa. And they're flying those drones, and they get a mission, those armed drones, and, you know, they're flying it from Nevada.
Yeah.
They just had
They
lunch.
do get to
just,
go home at
They
night.
go
they
home
just
every
had
night,
breakfast
right,
with
exactly.
Their family.
Yeah.
They just put
Yep.
their kids on the bus, and they went in this trailer, and now they're pilots of an unmanned aircraft flying
other
over
side of the world.
Afghanistan,
Yeah.
and, you know, they're
Sometimes
watching
doing
it. They're watching the
devastating
bombs
things.
hit. They're watching the devastation, and sometimes you kill innocent people.
Right.
Civilians get killed in
Yeah.
war, right? And it's unfortunate, and you do all you can to mitigate that, but the guilt that comes with that is unbelievable, particularly when the investigations hit and
Right.
they go all the way back and they're, you know, analyzing everything, and, you know, you actually see the pictures of the women and children or what have you, because our enemy, let's face it, they use them as shields.
Yeah.
They use them as propaganda. So
course
they
they do.
want us to fall, you know, they want us to, you know, to be attributed to. Sometimes they drag them in from somewhere else and they stage it.
Right.
You know, that's why we have post-mission loiter time, so that we can, oh, there they go. And
Right.
we've caught them, you know,
There's a,
planting things in there.
There's
And
a-
this is a dangerous thing, right? And so think of that guy who's got to go home and, you know, shield this from his family, but internalize all this stuff, you know. So it gets to your point where, you know, today with our technology, in certain services, the way they have to operate, whether it's peacetime or war, it, you know, it changes people in a fundamental way that others, you know, don't really understand. And they're very highly functioning, right? Very highly functioning people, and they can do just about anything they want. But to come back and to have it not recognized, used against you, and like you're not capable, is even more damaging, right, to our service members and their families. And
So-
that's the thing that we owe them.
Sharon,
Yes.
Christmas. What was it like being a mom and of a serviceman who's over in Afghanistan during
Afghanistan.
Christmas?
Lonely.
Because you got your kids,
Yeah.
so they're keeping your mind occupied.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Always busy. That's no question about that. But it is lonely. You know, you feel a little bit resentful, not toward the spouse, but toward the military. It's like, well, why you keep picking my husband to go every Christmas or every birthday? Or it got to be a joke where he was never home for my birthday. So I said, well, that just keeps me younger. I just can't deny that I had a birthday.
Right, exactly.
So I'm still 28. I'm
Right.
okay with that. You know, it was stuff like that. But
Got to the point where I would organize ensuring that she had her favorite cake,
oh yeah,
Yeah.
he'd line up
You know,
people to make my favorite cake.
make her favorite
and
cake, and
he-
make sure
he
that
used
she
to-
had a party.
I mean, really overdid it. Like
Yeah.
he'd call it the birthday extravaganza. That's what so that was a big joke around the house.
Rhubarb
It's your
pie,
birthday
too, probably.
extravaganza.
yeah.
It's spice cake's my favorite.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, spice cake.
but you know, I'm fortunate
some-
to have very good family, extended family. I have 2 sets of parents myself, and Dawn's parents up till a few years ago. And we're all close. We have great, you know, siblings and.
Is there like support groups like for the spouses of?
We have what we call in the Army family readiness groups. But to be honest, we usually work amongst our small neighborhoods and things. And if families are by themselves, we do potlucks. We've done that many times with service members who were by themselves for the holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas. New Year's is usually like open houses at the commander's house. And so there's always activity, but you know, it's hard not being around your family.
It's hard
You know.
not having dad around for Christmas
Yeah.
when the little kids are tiny.
Yeah.
And
One time, it got to the point where our oldest, he was the only one at the time for 7.5 years. Don was in the house, and I said, "Where's Daddy?" Because I was like excited that he was home, and I wanted him to run over. And my son literally ran to the side table and picked up a picture, and Don was standing right there.
Wow.
But he goes, "There's Daddy," and I was like, "Oh gosh," I was like, "No, here's Daddy."
No.
But
Wow.
the best Christmas we had, of like to try to make us feel at home and more in touch with our service members deployed was actually that first one after 9/11. I can't remember if it was Best Buy or like Circuit City, one of those places. We were living in Kentucky, and they had all the family members come down. We signed up for a time slot, and they put us in a room like this with a backdrop, a Christmas backdrop, and we all made CDs to bring to send overseas to our spouses.
That's pretty
Yeah,
great.
it was great. That's funny. We
I
watched
still
that
have the
s-
CD.
We still watch it.
We watch it
It's
every Christmas. I'll
hysterical.
pop it in.
Yeah,
And it's just so funny.
really
'cause
funny.
My boys back then were, what, 6th grade, the oldest,
Yep.
and then the middle
Pre-K
one,
or
pre-K, and
I
then
think
Matthew was.
he was 2.5.
2, yeah.
Yeah, because he would have been 3 on the 29th of December.
And so now
So-
they're 31, 24,
And
and
almost 22.
Almost 22. And you pop that in, and they get to see themselves. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
And then they're, my oldest boy has 3 children, so our grandchildren get to see it, and they laugh, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, they were singing like Christmas carols to
Yeah.
him and telling him what they wanted for Christmas, and it's
They
just
really
it's
did
great.
a good job then.
They did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
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 That's
it
pretty
was,
awesome.
When I got that CD, I was psyched, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we popped it into our, little laptop computers that we had, and, it played, and it was really a great morale boost.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I have to
And-
say, after the 4th missed Christmas, I bought an artificial tree. I was tired of doing the real thing by myself, so I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm buying one in the box,
Yeah.
pre-lit and everything.
Yeah.
Pre-lit?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow,
now we
that's
have
cool.
2 trees at the house. One, we still have that one, and then we always get a real one. But until the boys got old enough to do it, that was the one thing I had to just say, I'm not doing that. There's a limit. I'm not doing it. And then one year, he was supposed to be gone over Christmas in Afghanistan, and he knew he was going to have an opportunity to come home, and he didn't tell me. And I made plans to go to Disney because I was like, it's just, it's hard. After a while, it's like, I'm just not in the mood to celebrate Christmas by myself. It's, we can celebrate when he gets home or whatever. And he called me on the phone. He still didn't tell me. He's like, so what are you doing, you and the boys doing for Christmas? I said, well, we're going to go to Disney World. And I said, where are you going to be? Like, just meaning where in the country of Afghanistan are you going to be? He said, I guess I'm going to Disney World. I was like, oh, wait, what? And I think he flew in, I don't know, 2 days before I had scheduled the trip. I was like, oh, thank goodness it wasn't after.
At least he
so-
called you and
Yeah,
didn't surprise
exactly.
you
Yeah,
outright.
got-
I wouldn't have been there. That would have been a real surprise.
Where's my family?
Surprise!
Oh, they're down in Florida.
On this tour, I got into Afghanistan in June, and December rolls around, and they're like, "Hey, listen, you're going to come back, and you're going to command. You're going to come back in February,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to command. Your brigade level command, and you're going to be here for 17 months. So we want you to go home and get a little bit of a break with your family before you have to come back for 17 months.
Yeah.
And so from 2009 to 2011,
11.
I was in Afghanistan
Yeah.
for 23
20
months.
Wow.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Came home to go to Disney World.
yeah,
And so I could have an operation. I was scheduled for an operation. So
Yeah.
I'll just stay through and you can go. But yeah, that was it. 6
that
weeks,
was it.
I think you
yeah,
came.
6 weeks. Yeah, and then
Yeah.
back over,
Wow.
and I didn't come back for another 17 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. But
Which was
pretty
awesome, the 17 months? or
Yeah.
the-
I think that was
no,
facetious.
I'm
He was being
facetious,
facetious.
right? I'm being facetious.
That was
And-
awesome.
And the military decided we can't carry this as a 23-month deployment. We're going
Yeah.
to get in trouble,
Yeah.
right? So they
Oh.
Broke it in.
yeah,
Okay.
broke it into segments
On paper.
on paper.
Yeah. Didn't do much for us, but it did.
But, it was, hey, you just, you go over, you do your job, you do what you're asked to do, bottom line, that's it, and you move out. And so that's kind of the credit that goes to, the families, right? That, and the sacrifice that they make, that, it goes, in many ways it goes unrecognized, right? Unless there's something that brings it to their attention for a period of time, whether it's an event, whether it's a show, whether it's this, whether it's that, and after that it's page 9 again, right? And
That doesn't mean anything to me. What's page 9 again?
the war's on page 9,
Like it's not
right?
front
No
page
one's
news,
paying
yeah.
attention to it.
Oh,
See what I'm saying?
newspaper, yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So, anyways,
I'm going to say something a little corny, because it is a little corny, but I guess, being a military spouse and a mom of, 3 kids while doing that, you don't celebrate, you don't look at the holidays for celebration. You look at the days and the times you are together to celebrate that you have time together,
Right.
So it wasn't like, oh, it's another Christmas, because really, there were so many holidays missed. And I really felt bad more for the kids than, because, I'm a big girl. So what? You're not here for my birthday, right? I can't deny that I'm getting a year older. But you feel bad for the kids. They're
Right.
the ones that really feel it more than anything. So we started just trying to do things around the times that he was returning and
Right.
made those times, special.
one time I come home and she planned all the vacations, and she goes, we're going to go to Arizona and we're going to visit my family, and then we're going to go up to Sedona and see all that Red Rock stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
the
yeah.
desert stuff that
High
you were tired
desert.
of.
Yeah,
High
I wasn't
desert.
even. I wasn't even.
Honey, I just spent 9 months in a high desert. What makes you think I want to go back to a high desert?
Right, right.
I was like,
But
oops.
it was a great vacation.
It was a good.
It was a great vacation.
We called that.
I really
we
enjoyed
called that
it.
vacation the Grand Ripoff.
The Grand Ripoff.
We went to the Grand Canyon,
Yeah,
which we
because that is the
determined
Grand
was
Ripoff.
just a real.
What they have done to the Grand Canyon to get money out of people is just unbelievable. It's a crime that would they take a national park like that and turn it into something.
But yeah, that is. I wasn't thinking.
But anyways,
Welcome
doing all-
home from the
doing all
desert,
the
babe.
cool
Guess
stuff.
where we're
Yeah,
going?
We're going to, and I'm like,
Yeah,
wonderful.
less than enthusiastic.
He was looking forward to coming home to Green Mountains.
That's right.
But it's
that's,
amazing
That's
to
right.
me.
Exactly. And I'm like, where can we go? We need to go on a vacation.
That in the short period of this country's history, we have figured out how to live very well in the desert. And places that I was at have been there for thousands of years, and they have no clue.
Oh yeah. All the
know?
reservoirs and Phoenix.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
like
Phoenix is a great
unbelievable.
city
Yeah.
in the middle of the desert, and there was no water
Right.
out there
Right.
before they
Right.
dug a
Yeah,
channel.
exactly.
Hey,
So-
we're out of time, but what do you have to say, each of you, to the servicemen that are still out there?
Oh, you go ahead.
Well, I just want to thank them for their service. Thank your families for the sacrifice that you make. I live with the memory of 72 service members that I did not bring home, that were doing missions that I directed them to do, and in a lot of cases I was on the ground with them at the time. And I think of them every single day, and I think of that sacrifice, and I try to equip myself with honor every single day so that I do not do anything that brings discredit upon their memory and the sacrifices that their families have made. And just know that we're thankful that you're out there, that you have picked up a rifle and you're going to stand a post and you're going to protect us. And I want you to know that from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate that, and I will work my tail off to make sure that our service members and our veterans get the recognition that they deserve.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Sharon. What's your
welcome.
name? Josh, I think.
Oh, and Garrett, thank you for the corsage again.
Oh, you're welcome.
Because it really brightened up my
Yeah,
gray
it's
hoodie, and I
Love of
appreciate
country.
I
What can you
appreciate
say?
that.
Grunt
I know.
style. All
Hey,
the way.
remember, Christmas is about the birth of Jesus Christ, who was born with the intention of dying for your sins. So be grateful for that. If nothing else, for Christmas, you have the birth of Christ. We'll see you guys next year.
Stay safe on the roads tonight.